Okay, so picture this. You come home after a long day of work, you're starving, you need to cook. You open up your kitchen cupboard and it looks like this. You don't know what the hell's in there, and even if you did, you wouldn't know how to find it. When you look at that, do you feel inspired to cook? Probably not. One glance at that monstrosity's probably sent your brain racing, thinking of all the nearby takeaways that you could be ordering from right now. But let's say you miraculously resist the urge of the local takeaway. You start pulling out ingredients only to realise you're out of peanut butter. You didn't buy any the last time you were at the shop because you weren't sure whether you had any or not. You also realise you don't have enough rice for 2 people, and that the bay leaves that you were going to use are 4 years out of date. First of all, Christ knows what dish you were going to make with all those ingredients. If you were going to try and put that together, you've probably got bigger problems than kitchen organisation. Second, if you managed to make it this far in the first place, you've definitely caved now, and a curry from your favourite takeaway is already en route. My point is this: when your kitchen is unorganised and messy, when you don't know what you've got in stock nor how to find what you do have in stock, you don't feel inspired to cook. In this situation, cooking isn't something that you look forward to, it's something that you dread. But if you organise your kitchen, cooking can become a joy. Even if you live in a small space, it's still possible to be organised. You just need to put in the time and the effort. So, let's get started. Hi, I'm Adam. I'm a home cook on a journey to learn more about food and cooking, from history and the environment to new recipes and ways to cook. And today, of all things, we're going to organise your kitchen. There's no getting around it. Organising your kitchen will take time, but you don't need to do it all straight away. I've broken the process down into 4 mandatory stages and an extra stage which is highly optional but strongly recommended. Stage 1, empty your cupboards and take inventory. Stage 2, which is optional, digitalize. Stage 3, measure and plan. Stage 4, clean up. And stage 5, restock. The first stage is about emptying your cupboards and taking inventory. Take everything out of your cupboards and gather it all in one space. Write out a list of all the stuff you've got. All your spices, condiments, oils, even those instant noodles that have been in there for 3 years. Also write a list of all the items you'd normally have but that you don't have right now. Say for instance that you'd normally have olive oil at hand but you've run out. Write that on the list anyway. It might be helpful to take inventory of all your storage stuff as well, so things like jars, racks, boxes and all of that, as well as the measurements. When most people are organising their cupboards, they just take everything out and then just unmethodically ram it back in however it fits. We're not going to do that. The problem with that approach is that you haven't actually gave it any thought. As soon as the cupboard gets full again, you'll inevitably find yourself back in the same position. By taking a list of all the items that you have now and those that you'd normally have, you're essentially building a pantry list, a collection of all the items you should always have at hand. And we can use this list to plan out your cupboard space based on what should be there. You can design it so that everything has its place and you won't have to reorganise your cupboard every single time you go shopping. The easiest way, in my opinion, to achieve this is to take Kenji Alt J Lopez's advice and digitalize your pantry. The idea is simple. Make a digital list of all your pantry items and keep it up to date as you throw stuff away and buy new stuff. By doing this, you can always see what you've got in stock. You know what you need and you'll never buy something you already have. Truth be told, setting up a document like this, it's effort, but it can pay off in the long run. It's pretty easy as well once you've got that physical pantry list that we wrote out earlier. I mean, you did write that out, right? Let's assume that you did. You just need to take that list and put it in a spreadsheet or something. I've created my digital pantry in a note-taking app called Notion. I've set it up so that I've got a list of all my pantry items and a toggle called In Stock. I've set up a view which collates all the items that don't have the In Stock toggle set. So as I use my items, I'll just uncheck the In Stock toggle, and then that view which collates all of those items is essentially an automatically generated shopping list. But you're not here to listen to me waffle about spreadsheets all day. This stage, like I said, is highly optional. As long as at the very least you're putting together a pantry list, you'll be fine. Which brings us to stage 3, measuring and planning. When I set out to organise my cupboard, I thought to myself, yes, I'll be able to utilise every centimetre of cupboard space. I'll make a diagram, figure out which products will fit perfectly, and I'll be an organisational king. Delusional is an understatement, quite frankly. Even though most kitchens are designed in a standardised way, and mainstream kitchen products are often designed to fit them, if you really want to organise your space to be perfectly utilised, you'll probably need bespoke products, or you'll need to do a shitload of research. And it's just not worth it, to be honest. I perused loads of products, both in-store and online, and nothing was perfect for my cupboards. There were loads of products that kind of worked, but there was nothing that was a perfect fit. In the end, I abandoned my honestly pointless pursuit of perfection. Voltaire once said, "Don't let perfection be the enemy of good." Though for some reason I doubt he was referring to kitchen cabinets when he said that. Though, even without perfection, you still need a plan. Look, it's easy enough. Just do this. Take that pantry list that you made earlier, physical or digital, and figure out how to utilize the space so that every item on the list has its place and is easily accessible. That's it. Although you want to make sure that you leave some room for new stuff that you're going to bring in the future, or stuff that you might only have stocked occasionally. You don't want to have every centimetre of the cupboard full. Yeah, that does sound simple enough, but if it were really that simple, I wouldn't be making this video. So here's a few tips to make the whole process easier. First, group similar items together. It makes everything neater, more aesthetically appealing, and more functional. For instance, I've got a few of these shallow boxes for grouping condiments and carbs, and a few of these weird tray things for nuts and baking equipment. Second, invest in clever storage equipment. I bought this stand thing to give me some extra space, and I've lined up all my oils and vinegars on top. Above that, there's this nice little pull-out drawer which I've used for storing miscellaneous items like cloths and recipes and that sort of thing. But the best investment by far was this Lazy Susan. It means that spices don't get lost in the back of the cupboard. Everything is within reach. It doesn't seem like much, but these storage solutions really made a world of difference. The third tip is that although I'm suggesting going out and buying all this new stuff, just make use of what you have. You don't need to spend a fortune on Lazy Susans and trays or whatever. Do you remember how I suggested making a list of all your storage equipment? Make use of that list before you start splurging on new stuff. See if you can repurpose any of it to fit your new design. In my case, for instance, I already had those weird tray things that I'm using for nuts and baking stuff, and I've just continued to use all the jars I already had for things like grains and legumes and that sort of thing. Even with these tips, you may be concerned that you still don't have room. And that brings us to the fourth step, cleaning up and clearing out. Truth be told, when you live in a place with a small kitchen, or if you're living in a shared space or whatever, you just have to be a little more selective with what you buy. If you want space, you'll just have to live with less. Nigella Lawson put it best. Buy those few ingredients which really do provide a meal quickly and easily, and don't weigh yourself down with various bits and pieces that you think you may get round to using one day. So basically what she's saying is don't waste space on spices and condiments that you're only going to use once. First, you'll rarely if ever use them, and second, they will expire. Most people know that condiments have a shelf life, but the same goes for spices. The lifetime of condiments will vary drastically and it'll be on the actual packaging, but here's the general rules for spices. Ground spices last about 6 months, whereas whole spices, i.e. those that haven't been ground to a powder, range from 1 year to indefinitely. They don't go off per se, but they'll start to lose their potency, and once they've lost the potency, well, you may as well just not have them at that point. In any case, if you've been living in the same place for a while, chances are that some, if not a lot, of your spices and condiments are already past it. It's probably best to clear out. Ask yourself these two questions. Is this in date? Check the expiry dates, give it a smell and so on. If it's out of date, compost it or bin it or whatever. And then 2, am I actually going to ever use this? If it is in date, but it happens to be some obscure spice that you're never going to use, do you really need to keep it? If you've got very little room, you're probably best just getting rid. If you're conscious about waste, you could try and give it away to a family member or a friend, or use an app like Olio. Olio is a kind of waste prevention platform. That's the most pretentious description I've ever heard in my life. But yeah, it's a waste prevention platform that lets you share food with your neighbours. You basically list an item, and if anyone's interested, they'll come and collect it for free. Another great way to save space and make things more aesthetic is to decant. By decant, I mean taking a product from the packaging that you purchased it in and moving it to a jar or something. Jars can be anything from fancy Kilner jars to just like a reused pickle jar or something. Though, ideally, the jar will be airproof to make the contents last a little longer. The benefits of decanting are numerous. First, an airproof jar, as opposed to open, exposed packaging, will increase the shelf life of your food. Second, using jars will make your cupboard more uniform. As you use and replace these products, the space that they'll actually take up never changes. Third, you can see at a glance how much of any given item you've got in stock. If your cupboard is just a bunch of bags stuffed into a corner, you're never really going to have visibility of what you've got, nor how much of those things you have. But when they're decanted in transparent jars, you can see at a glance exactly how much of every single thing you've got. So let's assume you've decanted. You're going to want to know what the hell are in those jars. This is especially important with spices. Don't be a muppet like me and think that you'll remember, because you won't. Look at this. Which one of these is smoked paprika and which one's chili powder? I mean, I've labelled them now, but I'm still not 100% certain those labels are right. I'd advise you to do the same. If you're sad like me and you own a label maker, great, now's the time to get it out. But if you're also anything like me, your label maker will be an absolute piece of shite, so toss it aside and just write your labels by hand instead. It's less aesthetic, but it's better than throwing cinnamon into your curry instead of coriander. Anyway, once you've tossed your expired spices, got rid of those spices that you've used a total of 0 times, decanted and relabeled, you can move on to actually cleaning the cupboards. This part's pretty self-explanatory really. Cloth, water, wipe, done. Now let's get everything in. Set up your new equipment, populate it all with your pantry items, and finally salivate at your newfound organisational bliss. Now, truth be told, I didn't quite manage to get everything to fit. I did have to get a little bit creative. Some stuff went on top of the cupboard, and I put some stuff on top of the fridge as well. These were generally things that were either too wide or too tall for the cupboard. And that brings us to the final stage, restocking. With your highly optional digital shopping list, you know, without any conscious effort, what you need. Notion tells you automatically. So with or without that useful tool, go out and get shopping. Thank you so much for watching. I'm constantly cooking, experimenting and researching to learn more about food and cooking, and I share what I've learned every single week. If you want to learn more about the food that you cook and better ways to cook it, please consider subscribing to the channel. See you in the next video.